Hi, I'm Jackie French. Once upon a time, there was a wombat. Her name was Mothball, and I met Mothball many years before I wrote Diary of a Wombat. Mothball was a very real wombat. She was found as a little baby wombat in Canberra. She'd been badly bitten by dogs, and she was rescued by the wildlife organisation WIRES. A vet looked after her, sewed up all her injuries, and she grew round and fat like a ball, and her skin, the scars came back as though she'd been moth-eaten. So they called her Mothball. But the scars recovered, and she grew into a lovely, round, brown, really healthy-looking wombat. She was given to an absolutely lovely couple who lived in Canberra to look after. They had a beautiful backyard full of grass for a wombat. They had lovely warm places where a wombat could sleep during the day. They fed her with a bottle every 2 hours. And as she grew bigger, she ate the grass. And she also discovered rolled oats and carrots. And she grew bigger, and she grew bigger. And she ate more rolled oats, and she ate more carrots, and she ate a lot more grass. In fact, she finally ate so much grass, they had no more grass left in the entire garden. And Mothball was getting to be a very large wombat. She was about a year old, and it was time for her to learn to be a wild wombat, to learn how to come back to the bush, and that dirt is her destiny. She lives in a burrow, not in the kitchen cupboard, having knocked out all of the saucepans. So they called me. We run a wildlife refuge, and if you take animals brought up by humans and put them straight back into the bush, they usually die. They have to have a halfway house. So we often act as a halfway house. So I drove to Canberra, it's about 2 hours away. I drove to their place, went into the kitchen, and there was Mothball, kicking all of the saucepans out of the kitchen cupboard. And suddenly this little face peered out, this beautiful round wombat face, gave me a grin, bounce, and was suddenly up on my lap, going, "Eh!" which in wombat means, "Feed me a carrot at once, please." So she just cuddled on my lap, and I fed her a carrot. And she was wonderful. She was just so sweet and so lovable. They said she's very fond of carrots. I said, yes, I can see she's very fond of carrots. I took her out to the car where we had a very big, tough animal cage. And they gave me 6 carrots for Mothball to eat on the 2-hour trip home. So she was locked in her cage, and I started to drive. And I got to Northbourne Avenue, the great big avenue that leads into Canberra, the main avenue. I got there in the middle of peak hour traffic, and I could hear noises in the back seat going, which was Mothball eating carrots. And then there was a silence, and I heard, "Yeah!" Mothball had finished her carrots, and she wanted more. But I didn't have any more carrots to give her. So then I heard, that's the sound of an angry wombat biting its way through the cage. And suddenly, whomp, 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 there was a small, round, determined wombat on my lap as I was driving, demanding carrots in the middle of the traffic. Now, I couldn't pull over. There was nowhere safe to pull over. And even if I did pull over, what could I have done? She'd bitten through the cage. There was nothing else to do except keep driving very slowly and very carefully, with an angry wombat on my lap who kept going, "Yeah!" and trying to chew the steering wheel. I got to Bungendore, which is not terribly far from Canberra. I parked the car. I hope she didn't rip up the seats while I was gone. I locked the car and I raced into the supermarket and I bought great big bags of carrots and I raced out again and I put all the carrots in the back. And Mothball went gop, 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 carrots, and started to eat. So I drove home after that to the sound of very happy crunching of a wombat who had got far more carrots than she could eat and was just happily going. I got home. I opened the door. Mothball leapt out. And there was grass. There was grass everywhere. More grass than she had ever seen. And she started to eat and eat and eat, and she just loved the lush green grass. And then I led her to the wombat hole behind the bathroom, and she sniffed a bit. She'd never seen the wombat hole before. And she went inside and came out again very quickly. Paused, and she went inside again. And I couldn't hear anything. I waited, and I waited. And then suddenly I heard scrunch, 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 scrunch. Mothball was digging soft brown dirt. And after about 5 minutes, the furry head peered out, all covered in dirt, with again a great big wombat green. Dirt! I have found dirt. I love dirt. Dirt. And she raced back into the hole again and kept on digging. Mothball loved digging. She stayed with us for at least 6 months after that. I didn't really keep a note how long she stayed. Like most wombats who return to the bush, she stayed with us for a while. I started off giving her the occasional bottle because she was still a young wombat, sometimes oats, sometimes carrots. But mostly she ate grass, and finally she wandered off for a few days, would come back. She wandered off for a few weeks and came back. And then she wandered off and I didn't see her again. And a year passed, or maybe 2 years, and we had a drought. The grass withered and became brown and then finally vanished from the ground. The creek stopped flowing and was just springs and small pools. And one afternoon there was a noise at the back door. And it was Mothball. And she was hungry. And it was all our fault. I opened the back door, but before I had time to open the screen door, Mothball pushed her way through the screen door, raced down the hallway, raced into the bathroom, tore up the doormat, grabbed the end of the toilet paper, dragged the toilet paper all around the bathroom and then all around the hallway. By then, I'd managed to get a packet of oats and get it open, and she butted me behind the back of my legs and I went flying and the oats went absolutely everywhere. And I stood up and Mothball wept. I was wearing a long dress and she grabbed the collar of the back of my dress and she ripped my dress right from the collar right down to the hem. And by then my son had come out and he was laughing so hard that he could hardly stand up. But he made a noise that wombats follow and got Mothball to follow him outside while I got more rolled oats and some carrots and filled up a wombat bowl for her and gave her some carrots. And she ate. But she was still angry. It was hot and there was no grass. We should do something about it. She really blamed humans. And anything that smelled of humans, she would destroy. She chewed up the doormat. She bashed up the garbage bin. She chewed through a garden chair. She chewed the mop, and when we bought a new mop and we hung it higher outside the back door, she dragged a box over and then another box on top of that to get up and chew the mop again. Every night we would hear destruction. She leapt up and tore the washing on the line. She chewed up gumboots. Anything that was left outside she would destroy. Even during the day when wombats are supposed to be asleep. I remember one day I'd come back from getting the groceries. I'd left the back door of the car open while I took the first load up, and I came back again and everything was in shreds. Mothball was looking for the carrots and she'd found them. We do grow carrots, but not enough for a wombat like Mothball. Anyway, I was on the phone to a friend one day and she said, "Look, what's that noise?" And I said, "Oh, that's just Mothball attacking the doormat." The little lady, "What's that noise?" "Oh, that's just Mothball. She's actually scratching a hole in the back door to get in to make us give her carrots." "What's that noise?" "Oh, she's just knocking over all the geranium pot plants." And finally I realised I was writing the diary of a wombat. But it took about 3 years to do it. I had to find a way to make it seem as though it was a wombat talking, and that's not easy. When you write a picture book, you need to have an adventure on every page. So every time you turn the page, you don't really know what is going to happen next. I had to find a way to find what wombats mostly do, which is sleeping, digging and scratching into a book. So it actually became a story where you start somewhere and you have the adventure and you end up somewhere different. It took me 3 years. And then we had a problem. How do you illustrate a brown wombat in a black night? You cannot do it. It is boring. You don't see anything. So Bruce Watke did some magic. He turned black into white wherever you see white here. It's nighttime. And he also gave the wombat a more distinct shading around the eyes and the mouth, just so you can see the wombat's expression. Wombats do have expressions, but it's rather hard to see in illustrations because a lot of their expression too is their body language as they move and their smell, and you can't put that on the page. Be very grateful we can't put wombat smells on the page of the book that you're reading. Bruce also did something else wonderful. He created a new typeface that looked as though a wombat might have written it. So HarperCollins published it. And even though the editor thought it would do well, many people thought it wouldn't. So they only printed 3,000 copies, which sold even before the book was released. And so they had to print it again and again and again and again. And everyone thought no one overseas would want a diary of a wombat. No one knows what a wombat is. That was just about 20 years ago now. It's been translated into at least 40 languages. I have no idea how many countries it is sold in, because even now we get countries that I've hardly even heard of asking for the rights for their own edition of Diary of a Wombat. It's gone through many, many editions. It's been made into one wonderful musical play with Monkey Bar Theatre for young people, and also lots of other plays by organisations around Australia. That one small wombat has galloped away across the world eating carrots. In the USA, there are wombat clubs of readers because they want to be as determined as a wombat. It was a joy to write that book. It was a joy to live with Mothball. She stayed after it rained. And it did rain and rain and rain, and there was plenty of grass, but she still wanted her carrots. She'd grown used to having carrots for dessert, or maybe as an entree before the grass, because she'd eat grass all night. And she grew older and older. She had 2 babies, at least. One of them lived in the hole that Mothball had dug underneath our bedroom, just like she did in Diary of a Wombat. And now Mothball's granddaughter lives there. Mothball's granddaughter is called Wild Whiskers, and she's not quite as brown as her grandmother, and she's bigger, and she's got a flatter back. But she is just as stroppy, or even stroppier. If Wild Whiskers sees a wallaby eating her grass, she'll race over, bite the wallaby on the leg, and then go back to eating. Whenever I take Carrots out for Wild Whiskers, I wear gumboots. Wild Whiskers, I don't think she really means to hurt me badly. Just a sort of a nip to say, look, I am boss here. But wombats have got very tough skin. Humans do not have such tough skin. And wombats don't realise quite how much damage they can do just with a nip to a human being. She is the stroppiest wombat I have ever come across, and I love her very much indeed. And I think even though she yells at me to bring her carrots, even though she may often ignore me, even though she may try to bite me, I have a feeling that Wild Whiskers is actually rather fond of me as well. And she lives under the bedroom. So every night as I go to sleep with the sound of, which is not the sound of a wombat eating carrots. That's the sound of a very happy, very stroppy wombat eating grass just outside my bedroom. It's one of the happiest sounds that I know. And for me, living with wombats has been a complete joy. And I hope with Diary of a Wombat, with the wombat books that have followed it, that I've been able to share just some of that joy and the life of Mothball with you.